The first thing that we are going to start with is making sure we have all of our materials. I'll go ahead and I'll put it in the description as well as flash it on the screen here, what all we are going to need for making this house. Now, I already have a pre-cut pattern. What I had done was I went ahead and measured how big I wanted the house to be. So the front and back is all one piece. This and this are for my foam pieces. What we'll do is we will trace two sides, two rooftops, and then a front and a back, and a 10-inch square for the bottom. First thing I gather is my pieces that I use to trace my foam. A 10 by 10 inch for the bottom. This is the front and back, all one piece, and it is on the bottom 10 inches, 8 inches high, and about a 7 5/8 inch apex. Then the roof is 10 inches because that's how big our width is of the house. And then the height is about 8 inches. So what we'll do is we'll cut out the foam first, but I've got all of my materials gathered here. I'm going to do the roof in our little black and white bats. And then we are going to do the outside in dark gray. And I thought for funsies, I'd make the inside dark red. And then I've got my U-Haul over here too. Without further ado, let's get started. Get our pieces. Only need one floor, and then we need 4 of these, and then 2 of these. We're going to use this little leftover piece first. Initially, I had used the green colored foam that you can, well, not anymore, but you could purchase at Joann's. I have since found another vendor that I really like this foam, and it works out to be just a little less expensive for me. And I buy it in several rolls at a time, and then I will link that in there as well. It's called the Foam Factory. I do have a video of how I unpack my foam and roll it up into these. So in case you want to see that. All right, so let's start with the bottom because there's only one. And then we will need 4 of the 10 by 8s. Now we have all of our foam pieces. We've got the 2 front, the 2 roof, the 2 sides, and the bottom. We're going to set these aside, and I will work on my U-Haul next. When I make my houses or my cubes or anything, I usually make the pads. They end up being a little over 11 inches. With this house, I'm just going to make the 1 pad instead of 2 because I recently just changed my shop for you guys to be able to order 1 pad or 2. And I definitely recommend at least 1. 2 is nice because the house can stay there, but you can change out the pad frequently and you won't have to wash the house. So that's why I had initially offered 2 pads all the time. But now I've decided that I think it's helpful for someone who may or may not want 2 pads. Or maybe they have extras of a different kind and they don't mind, like we didn't mind when we had Elvis and Cosmo, putting a pad in there that didn't match what the house was. All right, so we're done with the U-Haul. And then we're going to take our pattern for our foam. And I haven't made a pattern for the fleece. I just modify this, and I'll show you how. Whatever we use on the outside, we're going to need the same amount of pieces for the inside. I'm sure you probably already can kind of deduce that. To save time, I will normally cut out 2 pieces at a time. So I make sure that my fleece is nice and flat, no wrinkles, so that each one that I cut is almost identical to the one underneath it or above it. Now I'm not going to put this up against the bottom of the fleece. What I'm going to do is give it about a 2-inch excess all the way around. The point doesn't really matter if it's a little shorter or longer or what have you, because we're going to cut the excess off anyway after we sew it. But in order to have enough fabric to go around the foam, you want to make sure that you have it at least, I would say at least 1.5 inches. I go 2 inches than the foam, because the foam is 1/2 inch thick and you have to allot for the size of the foam when you're sewing. So as you can see, I'm measuring from the end of the pattern out 2 inches. So let's go ahead and compare it to our house front. And I'll show you what I mean when I say it's bigger all around. When I put this on here, this is what it will look like. All right, so those are the inside pieces, the front and back. Now we're going to do the roof and the sides. So I don't have to do the measuring all over again with the ruler. I just go ahead and take one that I've already cut and use that as my template for the other two. You want to be careful not to stretch it out, because you could make the ones underneath much bigger, and then you'll wonder when you're sewing, oh, did I mismeasure that? Is this one wrong? Is that one wrong? So just be cognizant of that when you're using another piece for a template. All right, so we've got 2 for the roof, 2 for the sides, inside. Now for the bottom, we only need 1 of this color, because we're going to do the other one on the other side in the gray. For the floor, I have a pre-cut 13-inch square, and as you can see, the 10 by 10 fits perfectly in there. I don't have to do the ruler. I should probably make templates for the others, but I don't want to. Oh, we need to do the potty pad. We are all done with our red. Okay, so we've got the 2 pieces for the potty pad. Oh, well, that was dumb. Silly me. I just cut out 2 grays for the roof when I knew I was going to do it in bats. Oops. Oh my gosh. Okay. Here is everything we just cut out. Potty pads, all the foam pieces, front and back, red and gray, bottom, and then the roof and the sides, and then the bats for the roof. First thing I put together is the potty pad. So we've got our U-Haul here. And then you lay down wrong side facing the U-Haul, and then the right side of the next piece to the right side of the piece that's on the U-Haul. I usually turn it over and just make sure that all of the creases and bubbles are out of it. That's it. The next thing I work on is the front and the back. On my houses, I have like entryway and the exit way. So I have a hole in the front and the hole in the back. You're going to lay down your first piece right side facing up, your second piece right side facing down, and it may not match up perfect. It's fine. Essentially, you're going to be flipping the other side around later anyway. And then we're going to place our foam. And essentially, you want to make sure it's kind of how you measured it out in the beginning, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches, 2 inches. While I have these here, then we're going to take our doorway. This doorway measures 4 3/4 by 5.5. I just found that to be a good size for guinea pigs, ferrets, hedgehogs, chinchillas to get through without being too small. What I try and do is get the top of the doorway as close to the corner of the roof and the side as I can. I don't know why. It doesn't really matter, I guess. A door is a door. Now we can work on our bottom. Because we're not going to cut a hole in this, we're just going to pin together before we base stitch it. I usually just do the corners, just pin the corners, because you're just going to stitch all the way around anyway, and you won't need those pins anymore. So that's what it looks like. The right side facing down, bad side facing up. And again, you're going to kind of put that in the center like you did when you cut it out initially. Now, if you can't tell what side of the fabric is the right side, what's the wrong side, you can look at this, and this is pretty clear. This is pretty fuzzy. Or you can do my trick and pull both sides, and if it rolls to one side or the other, it rolls to the bad side. Same thing for the sides. All right, and there we have it. We have all of our pieces prepped and ready. We've got our 2 front and back. Got our potty pad. We have the base of the house. We have the 2 sides. And we have the 2 pieces of the roof. Now we can go to the sewing machine. Now comes the fun part. We're going to go ahead and start sewing this together. I start with the roof. I go ahead and put the 2 pieces together. Now, this is what we would call an inline or patterned fleece that goes a certain direction. We want to make sure that we're not going to sew it like this, because if we do, then we're going to have the bats upside down on the other side. So we don't want to do that. So we want to put them flying the same, so that when I sew it up here, I'm going to have bats flying that way and bats flying that way. Just a little tidbit of info. When you put your house together, whatever pieces you're pinning, clipping, I like to use pins because it helps me to keep everything in place a little bit easier. You want to make sure that your foam pieces line up, not your fabric, because it's fleece and it stretches. If I sew this with my spider web knit, it's all over the place. So that's why I pin it. Then what I do is I open it up and I look at it, and here's where I pinned it. And so I put my fingers here on each side to see if the foam is lining up, and it is. So this is what I do with every piece that I put on to the house. So once I put this part, I make sure everything lines up. The sides line up. You know where I'm going with this. All right, so we're going to start with the roof. We're going to go ahead and get that sewn together and move on from there. I'm going to try and give you a different view just for a couple seconds because the phone is right in front of my face, literally. So when I'm sewing this together, you can see how high, I think you can. Hang on, let me take this off of here. Here's the view that I see when I'm sewing. This is the foam. I try to get as close to that foam as I can with that foot. And typically I will push down and guide it through as I'm sewing. I can't do it now because I'm holding the phone with my hand. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're watching me sew. All right, the next piece that we're going to sew is the front or back of the house to one of the sides. And again, we're going to match up the foam, not the fabric. Okay, I don't know if you can see that. I know the lighting in here is really not that great. And then we're just going to sew all along here. And then when I get done with this one, we're going to do the same thing to the other one. So I'll just kind of blow through all of this. Okay, we have all four pieces together. All right, so we have the front, side, back, the other side. Now we're going to pin those two together and sew that. Here is what we just finished sewing. Now we have a box with no roof and no floor. The next thing that we are going to do is to put the roof on. Here is our roof, and we are going to put it on, whoops, this way. What I do is I will pin the roof to a side first and then come up around. First I'll sew that and then come around and then do the other side. And then we'll do the same thing to the opposite apex. So yeah, here we go. Right now you see I've sewn both of the sides to the roof, and the roof is caved in there. All right, now what we're going to do is pin the apex to the roof and then sew here and here, and then we'll do the same to the other end. Here we are with the roof completely sewn on, and now we will sew the floor. This part may be a little tricky to see. That's why I moved the camera angle, because on the left side of the machine is where all the bulk is, and that's where I had the camera initially, and unfortunately you guys just can't see any sewing at all. But you get the idea of what I'm doing. So we're going to sew the bottom on now. And there we are. We have completed a spooky house. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one.